The tarnished will soon return, guided by grace once lost. Greetings.
Hello YouTube, I am Psykadea, and I got to play the early network test of Elden Ring this weekend, and I kinda want to talk about it. See, I've been a big Dark Souls fan for a long time. Elden Ring is kind of what I've been waiting for since the end of Dark Souls 3, and it really lives up to the hype. What Fromsoftware has done with this title is combine all of the best ideas from all of their other titles. It's really kind of genius, and I'm going to talk about a few things that I liked from the network test, and a couple of things that I didn't. So a lot of people seem to think that Elden Ring is just Dark Souls with a horse. And while that's not a totally unfair description, I think it's a lot more than that. Even if it was just Dark Souls with a horse, however, hell yeah, give me that. I'd be down for that. But it does a lot more for the Dark Souls formula than just add a horse. Weapon arts are back in the form of Ashes of War, which are now swappable, and also handle your infusions as well. So you don't have to go to Andre to get your weapon changed to magic or quality or whatever. It just comes along with the power-up. And the weapon arts here are really spicy. There's this wind attack you can get on quality weapons, which is pretty good on damage. It's like if the Storm Ruler was actually useful. Some of the shields have weapon arts also. I found this one coiled shield. It has a snake fitted to the front of it, and you can use it to make a ranged snake bite poisoning attack. It's pretty cool, but it's really hard to poison bosses with it. I also found this red dagger, which has a ranged attack, which causes bleed, which carried me through more than one boss, I'll admit. You can see me here just barely survive the encounter with one of the last enemies in the network test. This thing was a big grafted arm monster in the attic of the castle. This thing is pretty scary, but once I got a bleed proc off, I actually killed it. Now, some of the unique weapons have their Ashes of War fixed to that weapon, which means you can't change those out. So we kind of have that same Dark Souls boss weapon thing where you can't really change much about those weapons. But those usually have a pretty cool, unique move. This greatsword that I found has this attack where you spin up the sword while it floats away from your hand and then come in for a big explosion attack. It's actually not that good of a move because it's really easy to be slapped out of it. But if you do manage to hit somebody with it, boy does it hurt. Stealth is actually a viable option in Elden Ring, which is a surprise for Souls players. But probably not if you played Sekiro. They kind of got it down there. There are enemies that will walk around with horns. You should usually take out those enemies first, because they can blow the horn when they see you and aggro everybody in like a 5-mile radius to your location. So it's generally a good idea to take those guys out quietly, and then you can kind of single everybody out like you would normally in a Dark Souls game. It is pretty easy to get overconfident and get yourself ganked by a horde of basic enemies. Trying to take down this caravan in the open world could get a little hairy, because all of the enemies would aggro to you at once. None of them were hard individually, but they could add up. I eventually got taken out because it was a battle of attrition. But when you do get through to that whole thing, There is a pretty spicy reward in that chest. And while I'm on the subject, I think the open world adds a lot to the, well, let's be real, the Dark Souls formula that we're seeing here. There are all types of things for you to go out and interact with. You can find dungeons just hiding in corners all over the place. It really reminded me of Skyrim, actually. One of the best parts about that game was wandering around and finding little dungeons hiding in different corners of the world, and just going off on a little self-contained adventure. And Elden Ring has that. That's pretty new to the Dark Souls formula. Like, there were side paths that you could go off on, but these are their own self-contained little dungeons, and they always have a nice reward at the end. Always makes it feel worth it to go through there. But I do have to say, I hate these little gargoyle bastards. Just look at them. They come in real quick for a fast attack, and then they back way off so you can't hit them with melee. Oh, they're terrible. Little jerk enemies in the side dungeons aside, I really like the open world in Elden Ring. It gives you a lot of freedom to decide where you want to go next. You can wander into anywhere. Up in the corner of the map, there's this just a graveyard with a bunch of spirit jellyfish floating around it. It's a really surreal area, and you do not have to go there at all for anything. You can just find it just by wandering around. You just find weird things. There's these octopus ball monsters on the beach. These things are... I don't even know what to say about these things. I wish I wasn't picking up ovaries from them, but, you know, to each their own. And while we're on the subject of fighting big, ugly monsters, the combat in Elden Ring is exactly what you would expect from the Souls series. It is methodical and precise, and sometimes a little frustrating. A lot of the bosses here were not actually that bad to fight. Most of them I actually found to be fairly easy, except for Margit the Fell Omen. This guy is just a dirty cheat. He swings a big tree at you, and he can produce energy daggers and throw them at you from across the arena, or just hit you with them up close for a lightning-fast up-close combo that you didn't see coming. I mean, big surprise, a Souls game is hard. Who would have guessed? But the bosses here are really unique, different. There was this statue thing that was... It was really robotic. It was kind of hard to tell its movements. Don't judge me for having summons in most of the fights. This was a network test, guys, and I just wanted to test out the jolly cooperation. Speaking of multiplayer, we'll get into invasions here in a little bit. But yeah, what I basically want to say here is that these bosses are really good. There's a lot of variety to them, and I just had such a blast. I tried to fight the dragon with a phantom helper. But the thing is, in this game, when you summon phantoms to help you out, you are susceptible to being invaded. So co-op players, look out. But this is also kind of bad news for the invader. Anyways, we'll get into that here in a little bit. Basically, I got invaded during the boss fight with the dragon, because that takes place in the open world. There are two open world kind of wandering bosses in the network test, and I wonder just how many are going to be in the open world in the full title. Apparently this was just a small section of Elden Ring, so I'm very excited to see the rest. There was this other wandering boss that I can't remember his name, but there was this big mounted character, and he is pretty hard. I went back and fought him later on in the network test. I played about 9 hours altogether, and he still whooped me pretty good the first couple times I tried to fight him. If you try to take cover from this guy in the nearby church, he actually does property damage to the place. and I can't stand for that. That is crackhead Santa's home, and I will not allow you to besmirch this place. But I wonder how much of that we'll actually see in the full game of enemies destroying the environment. I know that the dragon can take out trees and whatnot, but seeing this sentinel destroy part of this church, that was pretty cool. You could actually have these giants destroy a statue out in the storm cliffs. But that's the only way to get into it that I'm aware of, is you have to lure the giants over and have them attack it. Now, as far as multiplayer goes here, there are some changes that you should probably know about going into Elden Ring if you are a veteran of the Souls series. First and foremost, people cannot be invaded unless they specifically activate an item to let themselves be invaded, or they already have an ally in their world. I know half of you are cheering right now, and half of you are coping and seething. And trust me, I get it. I very much like the old invasion system, where you can just be invaded while you're wandering around the world, or jump some hapless stranger. You know, I am gonna miss those kind of invasions. But I understand why they would do it, because this game could be a little bit, let's say, tedious if you could be randomly invaded, especially in the open world. I believe it seals you off to a certain area of the open world, and if you were constantly getting sealed off all the time, it would be a giant pain, so I do see why they did it. But with that bit of bad news out of the way, I am very happy to say that the little bit of PvP that we did get to play over the weekend was pretty impressive. It was really fun. I'm having a great time. There is a little bit of that Souls wonkiness. Sometimes you don't hit somebody when you swear you did. It might have been a little bit of network lag. This was the network test after all. But it's looking like we're probably going to have a nice PvP community in Elden Ring, so that's really good. I'm happy for that. All in all, for a network test, I am really impressed with how Elden Ring is right now, and it still has about 3 months before launch, so it's shaping up to be pretty good. This might be one of my favorite games ever if they can carry the energy that they had in this 8-hour slice throughout the rest of the game. Anyways, that's all for me. If I could cover this for another couple of hours if I wanted to. There's a million things you could talk about, but I wanted to hit the main points and just kind of talk about this thing I'm excited about. Elden Ring is looking really good. Really, really good. And I am very excited for when it releases in February. I will see you guys next time. Psykadea out.